Welcome to Expand Your Empire, the podcast where women stop deferring wealth and start building financial power. I'm Amanda Taylor, investor, strategist, and disruptor of outdated money rules. It's time to own your worth, grow your assets, and build a legacy that lasts. So Susan bought the auto mechanic shop. And if you missed that one, go back and listen to episode 46. Now, she had never worked on a car in her life, but two of the men she had been supporting from the Ukraine were mechanics, and they needed jobs to stay in this country. And the shop was for sale. And when I asked her why, she said that when she first saw the invasion on television, she could do something or she could do nothing. And she chose to do something. She walked into an auto shop in a leopard print skirt, which is a fashion choice I 100% support. And she told them she wanted to buy his business. She made her offer and he accepted. Now, she used money she could get her hands on, a great way to finance, but there was nobody she had to ask, and she had something she wanted that money to do. That's the entire list. There was no fund behind her, no family office, no MBA in acquisitions. Welcome back to Expand Your Empire. I am Amanda Taylor, and this is episode 52, which means I've been doing this a year. And I'm marking it by getting really specific about a sentence I've said on this show probably 1,000 times. When women control capital, the world changes. Yes, I still believe it, but I've started to think a lot of you hear that and you translate it into something that I never said, which is more like, when I finally have enough money, then the world changes. So you keep earning, the number goes up, and you wait for something to arrive to tell you that you're cleared to start. But nothing is coming. There's no letter, there's no award. Now, control isn't the same thing as accumulation. You can have $400,000 and control almost none of it. You can have 80 and control every penny of it. Now, control is those three things that Susan had. She had access, which is money that she could actually use, that she could move. She had authority, which is whether or not you get to decide. And she had intention, which is having an answer to what you want that money to do. Now, most of you have more access than you think. Authority and intention are where I see a lot of people get stuck. So we'll start where you'd start, which is what I hear all the time. You don't think you have enough yet. Fine. Let's actually check it. Think of a woman you know who has 3 times what she had 5 years ago. Might be you. And ask her if she feels ready now. She doesn't. You see, the number moved and the feeling stayed exactly where it was because the feeling was never coming from that number. Every woman who hits her threshold quietly picks a new one on the drive home, and she'll do it again after that. And I have watched women with 7 figures tell me with a straight face that they're not quite there yet. There is a horizon, and horizons seem to get farther away the closer you get. But I'll go one step further because I don't want to argue with anybody about a number that, neither of us has looked at. So go and find out what you could actually move by Halloween. Money you could put into something without having to sell the roof over your head, without a penalty that eats the whole point, without a bank saying yes first. Almost nobody's honest answer to that is actually zero. I have nothing. Now, it's usually smaller than you'd want and bigger than you've admitted. So write it down somewhere. Now, that is access. It took us 3 minutes, which tells you that's not the hard part. Here is the hard part: authority. Authority is whether you can make the decision, hold the position, and stand behind how it turns out. And it can go wrong in a lot of ways. So let's really pull that sentence apart, because two different things are really living inside of it. Some of what you don't know is a real question with a findable answer. How is this taxed? Can I get the money back out? And how quickly? What happens if this one thing ends up being most of what I own? What does downside actually look like in actual dollars? Or like, is this person legitimate, and how would I check? Those are questions that a responsible woman asks. Go get them answered before you ever move a dollar. Learning to ask them well is a real skill, and honestly, it's most of what I do for a living. Now, the other half of that sentence, it has no answer. And that is the side that has been running you. Now, you've been learning for years. This show, the books, the course, the woman on Instagram who explains index funds really well. More of it hasn't made you feel ready, and more of it won't, because certainty isn't on the menu for anybody, including the people in the room who seem so sure of themselves. What they've got is a point of view and a tolerance for, you know what, being wrong in public. What you need is enough to understand what you're doing, a way of deciding that you can trust and can repeat, and the acceptance that some amount of not knowing will still be there when you sign. And let's talk about financial advisors, because the broad version of this is unfair. There are advisors worth every dollar they charge who truly spend their time making clients smarter. I work with some of them. But there's also a part of this industry that does really well when complexity makes you defer. And, you know, the easy way to tell which one you've got is whether you understand more now than you did 2 years ago. Now, the other thing that I hear all the time is, I'm afraid I will lose it. But once the answerable questions have actually been answered, there's usually another thing sitting right underneath them. And when women get honest with me, and I mean really honest, that sentence is usually like, I will mess it up. What if I lose it? And that one is real. You can lose money. I'm not going to talk you out of an actual risk that exists. So let me ask this in a different way. And I want to be precise, because the usual phrase here is money you can afford to lose. And that is like gambling language. Capital isn't disposable, and I'd worry about you if you treated it that way. What I mean is risk capital, an amount that you could put at risk deliberately with your eyes wide open without touching your security, your obligations, or your plan for the long run. Money where a bad outcome might sting, but it would leave your address the same. Okay? You have to decide what that is for you. Most of you already have that number. You could tell me what it is inside of a minute. And most of you have never done a thing with it. Stay with me, because this is the part that matters. You have already established that losing that money wouldn't wreck your life. You've ran the numbers, you know. So the question is no longer whether you could survive losing it. You answered that one before I even asked it. The question is what losing it would mean about you and who you would have to face afterward. Because let's be honest, men are usually allowed to turn a loss into experience. They tell the story at dinner. It's the lesson he learned, the tuition he paid, and everybody nods. But women, we are more likely to turn a loss into evidence against ourselves. Like, we have been carrying this suspicion that we're really not built for this, and that sooner or later, like, somebody's going to figure it out. And the loss looks like the thing that finally proves that. So we tend to stay out of anything that could produce that kind of evidence. So, hey, as long as you never try, never find out, and the suspicion gets to stay a suspicion. Now look, I have lost money. I have done deals that didn't work out the way I thought they would. I have put my head in my hands and had full-on tantrums, not gonna lie. And I could have quit. But A, I didn't go broke doing it, and B, I learned something in the process that let me do it again, wiser and better. So now, when a woman tells me she's scared she's gonna lose it, I've started asking a different question, and it gets to the truth faster than anything else I know. Who would you have to tell? There's almost always a face that comes immediately to mind. Losing money by yourself is survivable. Losing money and then sitting across the kitchen table from that particular person is what she's actually deciding. And once you can picture that person, you can look at what's really going on, because a lot of different things get lumped up together here, but only one of them is a real problem. Input is somebody's opinion shaping what you do. That's how anybody makes a decent decision. And I take input constantly from people who know more than me about whatever specific thing. And then you have agreement. Agreement is what co-ownership actually is. Some money is genuinely shared. Is it a marriage? Is it a partnership, a trust, some operating agreement, a plan you built with somebody over 20 years? When capital is joint, deciding together is the deal that you made. So go move joint assets on your own, and what you'll have is a lawsuit or a divorce. Permission. Permission is the third one. Permission is when money that's actually yours can't move unless another person says yes. Now that third one that's what I'm after. Okay? And when we talk about permission, we have to talk about what matters, because there's two different kinds and they don't take the same work. Some of the people that are still in your life, your husband, let's say he's got veto power over your investments, your business partner, the advisor that you'd have to disappoint out loud. Others have been gone for years. Is it a parent, your ex-husband, the grandmother with firm opinions about women and money? She may not be in the room anymore, but her voice is still entering the conversation whenever that number gets too big. Both of these things can really stop you cold. The people who are still here, you can take it up with. You can have that conversation this week. The people who are gone are harder, because that conversation isn't happening with anymore. It's happening inside you. Plenty of very healthy financial lives involve other people. What matters is whether you are participating as an equal. Do you understand the decision well enough to hold a real position? Does your position carry the same weight as theirs? If you disagree, do you work through it together, or does the conversation quietly end as soon as they have spoken? If you have a vote, use it. If you've had one for years and never exercised it, that is worth examining. And if the person holding that veto has been dead since the 90s, that's a different kind of work. And that is worth doing too. Now let's go back to Susan. Susan didn't have certainty. She had access, she had authority, and she had an answer. Which brings me to the answer. This is the last one, and it's the one I feel most strongly about. Say the money's reachable. Say nobody has to sign off or you agreed on it, then what? Most women go blank here. You know why? Because no one has ever asked them. Think back through your whole financial life. Who has ever asked you what you would fund if you could? Let's face it, a lot of financial conversations are built to sort out safety and risk and retirement. Very few are built on what you want your money to create. Those are different questions, and almost nobody is asking you the second one. Nobody asks what you'd build. Nobody asks who you would back or what would exist in 10 years if you were the one deciding. A question you've never been asked is a question you've never answered. So the money's finally there. Something crosses your desk, you have no opinion ready, and with no opinion, you end up doing whatever the most competent person in the room suggests. So my first thing was initially real estate. That's what I wanted to do. Doesn't matter what yours is. Permission to have a bad first answer, that's a gift right here. Susan, she had an answer. That's the part of her story I want to keep coming back to. She bought that auto shop, and then two men had jobs. Two families stayed where they were in the same school, in the same apartments, and that got decided in one transaction by one woman. No program, no initiative. Last year, companies founded entirely by women raised $3.2 billion in U.S. venture capital, but all male-founded teams raised $191 billion. That is the whole thing in two numbers. And it changes when more of us are the ones deciding where the money goes. Because money, it doesn't have values. The person holding it does. And money moved by women can land in places other capital overlooks because we've been standing in different rooms. We know different people. We notice different opportunities. Nothing to do with being better people. So every time a woman sits on capital waiting for clearance, a decision doesn't get made. A shop closes. The woman who needed $40,000 and one person's conviction goes without it. All of it quietly fails to happen for want of one person in the room willing to say yes. So I really want to name what is sitting under all of this, because I've kind of been circling around this for this last year. You are raised to look after money, not to aim it. Watch the budget, keep the family safe, don't spend too much on yourself, make it last, and you're good. You're exceptional at it. It's why the households and the businesses you run don't fall over. But nobody ever handed you the other job, the one where you decide what your money builds. And here's the part that I'd like you to be decent to yourself about. You have decades of practice protecting money and almost no reps at deliberately aiming it. Nobody's good at something they've barely been allowed to practice. If it feels clumsy, that's the most ordinary fact of the whole episode. Practice is something you can go get. There's no promotion into that job. Nobody's going to offer it to you, but it is available, and you can start small. So here is the line I am drawing for year 2. Expand Your Empire exists to move women from earning money to owning assets, controlling capital, and directing what happens next. I'm done trying to convince you that ownership matters. You've known for a while. So here's what this show is going to do for the next year, and you can hold me to it. We're building your capital thesis, so you have a position ready before you need one. We're learning to evaluate opportunity, what to ask, what to check, how to tell a real one from a bad one before you're knee-deep in it. We're using experts hard and keeping the decision, their expertise, but your call. And we're getting you practice, reps, small ones at first. We've got information, access, and enough practice. Then deciding stops feeling like some big event. Now I'm going to leave you with one thing this week, and it takes maybe 10 minutes and a piece of paper. Finish this sentence. If I could fund one thing, I would fund blank. It's allowed to be small. It's allowed to be a little embarrassing. Somebody I know bought a mechanic shop. I don't want this sentence so you'll go do it. I want it because a woman who already has an answer behaves completely differently when something lands in front of her. She recognizes it. The woman with no answer has to go think about it. And going to think about it is how almost all of these die. Have the answer sitting there. Then, when the shop goes up for sale, you're not starting from nothing. Now, part 2, I want you to send it to me. Be Amanda Taylor on Instagram. The link is in the show notes. That one line. If I could fund one thing, I'd fund this. If 40 of you say I'd fund other women's businesses and not one of you knows how, that's a series. If half of you name something within 10 miles of your house, that's a different series. So here is to year 2. And until next time, keep building.
If this lit something up, share it, review it, and get in the room. Join the Expand Your Empire community and start turning wisdom into wealth. You're not too late, and you're not doing this alone.